It's a pleasure to have you here, all of you. Lea and me thought that this can be a very interactive talk about issues of being active and staying active for animals in different ways. But it's great to have you here, Lea Goodett. Is that the right pronunciation? Goodett.
Yes, it's Lea Goodett in the Netherlands.
Lea
Goodett. It's hard to pronounce in different languages.
Yes, and you are the European coordinator for SAVE and also the national coordinator for the Netherlands. Yes. It's great. So Lea and me have been meeting since I'm a country liaison from Sweden now, quite recently became that. We have been meeting online with other European coordinators, and so that has been great. So I wanted all of you to get the opportunity to hear some of Lea's, and perhaps we can share also what inspires us and what makes us want to become or stay active for animals. So Lea, do you want to say something as a beginning about yourself before?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so my name is Lea Goodett and I live in the Netherlands. I've been active for almost 5 years now. I started doing outreach and 4 years ago I did my first vigil. That's where we bear witness to animals that are being slaughtered. And that was the moment where I realized how bad it actually was, and where I also decided to dedicate my life to animal rights and liberating them as well. I've done all sorts of activism through the years, from outreach, like I say, in vigils, but also been involved for a long time in rescuing animals. I've been doing Meet the Victims in the Netherlands. And also for Animal Save Movement, doing the vigils and safe squares. And for 2 years, I am the national coordinator of the Netherlands and also European coordinator. So I help all the country liaisons to support them in their activism. And I really enjoy it. I think I found a very beautiful activist family with SAVE, and I'm really happy to work with them. I'm 40 years old. I have 3 dogs, and so yeah, that's it. I have a husband who's also a vegan activist, which is really fortunate to have. So yeah, that's a short story.
That's great. Thank you. I can start with one question. Or Lea, did you want to start with one question?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, so I've been now in SAVE since 2017, and it was amazing to start this movement in Sweden, and that was quite easy to start new groups. It was inspirational, and many came, but then after a while, many people stopped coming, and groups and vigils became smaller. And that is a challenge, I think, for many groups, not only SAVE groups, but other groups as well. How can you keep the momentum going? How can you, what is it that makes people stop coming or keep coming to SAVE vigils and other animal rights activists? Lea, do you have some reflections on that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the questions that everybody asks the most, because I think it's not as hard to get new people. It's about keeping the people. And for me, the people that I started doing actions with, I think 5 years ago, they're almost all gone. There are only a few activists that are still around, that are still out there doing actions, and all the other ones, either they burned up or they left the community, because we are sometimes our worst enemy. A lot of infighting happens sometimes, but also burnouts. I think we see that a lot. I think a lot of people start this and then it's just so heavy. I think everybody who's been doing this for a while knows how hard it can be on your soul. It's soul crushing. If you do vigils for a long time, there comes a time where it's just sometimes too much, and we also have a tendency to not look after ourselves that much, And what I've noticed, this happens all around Europe, and I think COVID even made it worse. After COVID, a lot of people stopped. And what I think I saw is that COVID made it really clear how tired people were. I noticed when COVID came, I was doing actions multiple times a week. I was at vigils all the time across the Netherlands. And I remember that when COVID came, I was like, oh, I don't have to go anywhere. I can just have a moment and relax, and I don't have to feel guilty that I'm not there. And I think for a long time, we put this on ourselves. Like when I started doing activism, it was all about doing as much actions as we could. Like if you weren't there, you were not, think about the animals, they have it so much worse. And for me, that really made me think, like, what are we doing to ourselves as activists? And should we focus on that many actions? So what I've been trying to do as a national coordinator, also as a European coordinator, is to shift to not to action-based activism, but to community-based activism. So instead of saying like, oh, we have to do a vigil every month, or we have to do this outreach, or we have to show up every time, make a community that takes care of each other. Make it also, I wouldn't say fun, but I do want to say have fun together. Maybe not, of course, at a vigil, but make sure you build in those community events. I think in the Netherlands, that really helped build our movement, made it stronger. I have chapters in the Netherlands that have only 2 vigils a year, because that is what the organizer it feels comfortable in doing, and it goes for every action. And I think that's really important, that we set our boundaries, that we take care of ourselves, and really look out for each other. You know, I know when I joined Outreach Action, it was said at the beginning even, like, this is not a social event. We are here to do outreach. And you cannot speak to each other. You can only do that afterwards. And when I think back of that, it's like, that is so wrong. Like we live in a world that is not vegan. We live with friends and family and co-workers. And then you are with a group of vegans, and then you can talk to each other. I think that's really not a good way of approaching activism. Make those events fun in a way. Let people connect there, because this is the place where you feel with people who are also at your level. And I think we should really emphasize that as organizers, but also as national coordinators or European coordinators. Like, look out for each other. We started doing picnics and game nights and doing yoga things and make self-care programs. And I think as crazy as it seems, maybe we should put ourselves a little bit more on the foreground, instead of keep saying like, oh, it should be all about the animals. Because what I've seen is that a lot of activists quit after 2 years, and then a whole new group of people stands up. Only very few actually keep doing it. And yeah, so that's the first thing I think of. Like, make sure you take care of your community and your group. Check on each other. How are you doing? You know?
Yeah, that sounds wise, I think. You can do community events by themselves. We haven't done that so much in Sweden, but often after a vigil, we go out to eat or something like that. That's quite common in local groups. But yeah, for me, it's also important as at a vigil, to be able to chat. If you stand for 3 hours just to stand silent, that's almost, for me, being a social person, that's almost unbearable.
Exactly.
To be true. Yeah.
And those 10 minutes that you lose maybe in that time, if you gain years of activism from somebody, I think that's totally worth the 10 minutes. Because that's what's also, like, you have to, there's 2 types of people. Like, there's activists that have this to dedicate their lives, And then there's people who just want to do a little part of it, which is also fine. So they have their work, they have their families, they have their everything, and they just have a Saturday to spend. These are the people that we should really keep in our movement and cherish as well. And you're going to lose them if it's like really strict. And we have a lot of years to come. So yeah, I think it's really important to yeah, I think there's also questions in the chat. I can't read them. They're in Swedish.
Right. Yeah, Monica asks, maybe you can have some kind of a mentor who can be, yeah, that can introduce you to the movement. How about that? To meet sometimes and talk about strategy, how's it going? Yeah, that's something I wonder about. Yeah, Lea, do you have some experience of that, having a mentor? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and a very smart thing to do, to get new activists and connect them to somebody who's been around longer. Also to warn you of the traps that you can fall into of doing too much or focus too much on animals. Like I remember in the beginning, my feed was like flooded with like terrible footage of animals, and I felt like I had to watch it because, you know, otherwise I would close my eyes as well. And I would love to have somebody tell me like, please follow as many sanctuaries, follow funny meme page that have like, keep yourself also busy with other things, and somebody that you can ask questions. And we're actually trying to do something like that in the Netherlands. So whenever new people come, we connect them really to the organizer, who is also sort of a mentor. And I think that also goes back to what I told about like taking care of your community. In the Netherlands, we try to have organizers that don't just organize the events, but are really looking out after the people. So whenever we go to a vigil or somebody goes to an action of us, the organizer always reconnects with them afterwards. Like, hey, how are you doing? How was it? Did you thought it was hard? And we always do that either the same day or the day after. And we also do that after a week again, because a lot of times people are like, you know, I remember I was like, I didn't know what I was feeling. I was completely disconnected from the world. I remember walking to the street and think like, all these people have no idea what's happening. And I didn't know how to move in the world. But I also couldn't really tell what I was feeling. But a week later, I did have words for it, and then reconnecting and having somebody that actually looks out for you. I think that's the smartest thing to do. So if you can set that up in your country or in your chapter, I would really be a big fan of that, especially for new people, because it's such a hard thing to do. It is, especially when you actually bear witness and see the animals, because it's different. I think nobody can prepare you for how it's when you really stand there in front of a truck and see them. I thought I knew, but I didn't. So yeah, I'm really big fan of mentors. So if you can make that happen, please do.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Now, I've also been thinking about organizers, because it would be great to have organizers that would do that locally. Another challenge that we have is to just get organizers that can, organize the vigils or other events in Save, and that would be. I would be reluctant to put more like tasks on them than to reach out for new ones, especially those that are a bit socially not so interested, or a bit reluctant socially to talk to new people and so on. Do you have some suggestions how to do with that?
It could also be a coordinator, a national coordinator. We could even do it like cross European. So it doesn't have to, maybe if somebody speaks good English, it might be even really interesting to connect somebody from Sweden to the Netherlands or from Portugal to Spain. I think I always like meeting activists from different countries. I like hearing different languages and knowing that this fight is going on everywhere. So I think this is maybe a very interesting thing to see who likes to guide new people and have these mentorships. I would love to investigate this if that's possible, and to not put any more pressure on an organizer. I do think, and we do this in the Netherlands, is what you see is it builds the community. So when you grow your community and you retain your activists, eventually those tasks can be divided amongst more people. So there is less pressure on the organizer. Because if your community grows, somebody else can also help organizing. And I think maybe it's now an investment in time, but if you see what you get out of that, in the end, it will make it easier for an organizer. But I would love to look into making this like a cross-country thing. Let's talk about this more.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Johanna, thank you for your comment. She says a big reason why I had energy and wanted to return to a vigil was the fact that they were supporting participants on the spot, that said that I would be there for them. They would be there for her after the vigil, and that's really great to hear. And I've heard that at other vigils, so I'm glad we have that kind of thinking in the movement. It's just that it might not be organized at the moment to reassure that this happens every time. That could be good to have a structure on that, perhaps. But it's really great to hear that, Johanna, that you had that experience.
Yeah.
Anyone else commenting on this or something else?
I had a thought about what you said before, Lea, about standing quiet when you do outreach, for example, or if you stand with a sign and there is someone else doing outreach. I mean, at my local group, we talk quite a lot.
Oh.
But I don't know, because it's hard, because I kind of realized that it might not look as professional if we're standing talking all the time. But at the same time, we're going to stand there for 2 hours, and we do it every other Sunday. And I go there not only because I want to do animal rights outreach, but because I actually want to meet them. And it's like an unload of the brain to meet other people who sympathize. So, I mean, yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily gonna look very unprofessional and bad, because we're still standing there with the signs. And if someone comes forth to talk to us about what we're what is on our sign, because we have a picture of a dead cow, and we have the Stop Slaughter campaign in Sweden. And I mean, of course, we're gonna stop talking to each other and talk to the person.
Exactly. What I think people are very capable of understanding when they should stop talking and look professional. I think since we stopped saying this at our briefings, it never happened that it was like this mess of chaos, people talking to each other. I always say you can talk to each other when there's no conversations, but if you see somebody entering or somebody wanted to talk, please be mindful of that, because at the end of the day you are there to outreach. But that one conversation that you might miss, I remember being scolded for talking to somebody, and I remember how terrible that felt, and I never ever want to have anybody feel that. So I think an organizer should point it out, please be aware that if the public wants to speak to us, but I don't think it looks unprofessional. It even looks like something is going on if you talk a little bit to each other. It gives a little bit more of a buzz to a situation instead of people standing there and not talking and everybody's like, oh my God, what's happening there? Make it approachable, and I think conversations are good. Just be
and I also think about that. I mean, vegans and animal rights activists are kind of generally seen as being very boring, lame, or like, and I mean, that's like a stereotype that if you're standing there, okay, maybe you shouldn't like tell a joke when there are screens flashing of animals being killed. But I mean, we are also just like normal people who talk to each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have this conversation, and I see it slowly like changing, but I still have to tell this a lot of times. There's still groups in the world that have that rule of not talking to each other, and it's mentioned in the introduction, but also like the vibe of like you have to show up. Because if you're not there, you're letting the animals down. These are things that are actually are being said in our movement, not specifically Animal Save. I think we're really learning. But I always say to people, if you wake up in the morning and you really don't feel like coming, stay at home. Take care of yourself. You don't have to. If there's 2 bi-weekly vigils like every week, or there's a vigil every month, even if it's only every month, it gets draining if you have to do it every month. So I think we should really let go of that pressure that we put on ourselves. And if you let go of that pressure, you see that people start doing more. When I let go of the fact that people had to do an action every week or every month, and I said, just do whenever, what you think. If you think 2 times a year is good, if you want to do it bi-monthly, if you want to do it monthly, it's really up to you and what your time have. I see them get more excited. And the organizers started going to other people's vigils. And I know that's harder in Sweden because it's not as close as the Netherlands. But you get more excited, you get more energy, and maybe you even organize more because you remove that pressure of yourself of always showing up, and you do get drained. If you do this all the time, there comes a point where you're like, oh, yeah, because in the end of the day, like I think we're really making progress. I believe that we can actually achieve animal liberation for sure. I've always already seen it happening, but when you look at the numbers, we're not doing it really that right. Like there's still meat consumption is going up, climate change is getting worse. So yeah, we have a lot of time still to cover, and so yeah, it's really a marathon and not a sprint. I always say to people.
Yeah, definitely. Sandra Maria, she wrote, I remember one meeting where Anita Kreins, I think she means the founder of Save Movement, presented a program, a mentorship, where there are mentors and mentees. I can imagine that. So that's great. There is also globally thinking behind this. Yeah. One other thing can be to that I've been thinking about to find alternative activities. So perhaps not vigils is for everyone, and also if you have done it, you feel exhausted emotionally, maybe you want to do something else, and also it can be effective to change a bit the way you're communicating. I know in Uppsala, where you are, Lotta, you do a lot of outreach. And Lea, you mentioned, and that's the same idea with the Save Squares, to stand, maybe showing videos, handing out leaflets, talking to people, etc. And of course, there are so many other ways. I really liked in Uppsala, Lotta, maybe you were part of that also. You made like, what do you call it in English? Minnestund, like a memorial of animals, where you lit candles and had like silent. Yeah, I think that was a good variety also of activities you can do. Anyone want to comment on that, Lea or others? Lea?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and this is also something that I've tried to change in the last 2 years, because we were really like, oh, we do vigils and we do outreach, but what I love to do is bring the real grassroots back. So grassroots actually means that in your local area, you can organize. If you have a good idea, you can do it, and then Animal Save is there to facilitate. And that really took off in the Netherlands. We even bought a food truck, which is orange, and we hand out food, which is super positive. I am really because you know what in your local community works. And I think switching things up and doing things that are different and trying new things is so important. Again, for the purpose of that, we have to do this for a long time. So if you get creative and you let people come up with new ideas and new sorts of actions, I love the idea of a memorial. I think that is really touching. I think that is really makes a big impact also maybe on bystanders on social media. I think that everybody can sort of like feel like you lost somebody, and that's of course what's happened. And I think it's really important to, if you have a good idea, just talk to it to Martin and see if that's possible within the boundaries of Animal Save. Of course, we can't do anything. We're still love-based. But that's also, I don't know if people heard about the plant-based treaty, but that's a campaign that Animal Save started. And I remember that when I first heard about it, I wasn't that excited because I thought it was about the climate and we took away the attentions from the animals. But the funny thing is that for me, it kind of saved me as an activist, because now I have the hard things to do, which are the vigils. And with the plant-based treaty, we do food giveaways, and we give away free food to people, and we have like a completely different conversation, which seems maybe like it's not that important, but because I have so much fun while doing it, because you can laugh when you give out food, you can't stand there laughing when you with the screen, or when you are at a vigil. It just makes no sense. But we laugh our ass off. Sorry, maybe I can say that. But when we do the plant-based treaty, because it has all these colorful leaflets, it's really positive. It's really offering a solution to the people. And anything is possible with it. We do food giveaways, but we do also seed giveaways, giving talks to people. And I think it's really worth for chapters to look into this plant-based treaty and see what they can do to have a more sustainable form of activism. I think one thing that we need is success, and when you do outreach or when you're at the slaughterhouse, you don't know if people go vegan. Like in all the years that I've been doing outreach, there's only 2 people that I know for sure went vegan because they actually became activists. So there's 2 people in the 4 years that I've been doing outreach that reached out to me and said, hey, I saw you at the square and I'm super gutted about what happened and I want to be active. I'm going vegan. And what can I do? So there's all the other people who said like, oh yeah, this is terrible. I have no idea if they went vegan, and it's still 1.5% in the Netherlands that is vegan, and that was also 5 years ago. So did those people go vegan? I think we had at one point, I think we had like 26 chapters. And I don't see extra vegans. I see vegan options, but the percentage didn't go up. But when you're at the plant-based treaty and you're collecting all the signatures, every time somebody signs your form, it's a success. It actually works like a little bit of dopamine that shoots up in your brain. Like, oh yeah, we got another signature. And I think Sandra and Mia also have this. Like they struggled with this plant-based treaty, but then at the end of the day, they got so many signatures, and you're super happy. And even if it's a little thing, it is a success, and we really need successes. And yeah, so I'm a big fan of the plant-based treaty. Please, if you don't know what it is, look it up. We can maybe do another presentation about this. I could talk about it for hours, but I want to touch other topics too. But for me, it was a lifesaver. Yeah.
Yeah, and my sense is in the global animal save movement, the plant-based treat is the big thing now that really putting a lot of focus. And that also means that a lot of activists doing it. And so there are a lot of resources and experience and like materials, etc. that are worked out every week, I would say. So, and I know they have introductory calls or talks every Friday that anyone really can attend to in English then. Right. So if you're interested in that, if you're in Sweden, you can contact me or Lea if you're other countries, if you haven't been connected to it. Yeah. For me, to bring in the climate, it has been also like invigorating and giving me more energy, because they're really interconnected as well. You can see that so easily, I think. Not only that the animal industry contributes to the climate crisis, but also that both humans and other animals are impacted by the climate crisis.
Definitely. Yeah.
Let's see. Anything else you want to bring up?
I have a question towards you as like organizers of the Save movement. Is the idea that that the slaughterhouses, like the people working there or the managers, see that there is like real like people opposing what they do, like that we're disturbing their business?
Yeah.
Or is it that we're filming, or is it everything? I just want to hear like the
So actually it's not Save's point to disrupt the business when we do a vigil. Like there can be disruptive actions, but we are really I always say I'm not here for you, I'm here for the animals. And one thing that we have in the Netherlands is a very good connection with the slaughterhouses, which might sound weird, but there are actually slaughterhouses when we come. They have coffee for us and tea, and they welcome us. And it took me a long time. I've been an organizer for animals, for vigil organizer for I think 3 years now, for one of the biggest chapters in the Netherlands. And I worked really hard on having a good relationship with the slaughterhouses. And this is something that is a little bit hard to understand, because of course I want them closed. And when I remember my first vigil, and I was like, I couldn't even look at these people, because I was like, how can you do this? And how can you be so cruel? But then you also have to remind, I am only vegan for 5+ years. So what makes it worse for me to buy it than for them to actually do it? And I also realized that we need to have a conversation with these people if we want this to stop, and if we want to see what's happening there. I cannot be angry at them. If I start shouting at them, if I start to disrupt their business, I cannot, they won't let me near the trucks. So any other organization that does disruptive things, like that's all up to, I think we need a lot of tactics, but the beauty of Animal Save is that we are love-based, and that also extends in a way to the slaughterhouse workers. And what I've seen in the last couple of years is that now we are allowed inside. So this year we will start vigils inside the slaughterhouses. We're getting tours in the slaughterhouses. There's particular parts of the process that we can actually film. And not everything, but I think it's a process. So every time we get a step closer. There is one vigil that every time we come there, we get to take 4 chickens and rehome them, because we worked on a positive relation. When we come there, we are friendly. We don't shout. We don't make sure that we disrupt their business in any kind of way. We're just saying, like, today we are not here to shut you down. We are just here for the animals. And that's actually what we do. That's why it's called bearing witness, showing the faces of the animals. Because like when people buy products in the supermarket of the chopped up animals, they don't see the actually cut up animals. They see meat. And I've been a vegetarian for a long time. But my husband wasn't, and every time at night I used to cook his meat, and I didn't see it. I actually, even though I didn't eat meat, I didn't see it as a dead animal until the day I went vegan. I went vegan. I didn't know about dairy. I didn't know about like all the horrible things behind eggs. But the day that I saw it, it just sort of like a light went on. And that night I wanted to cook his meat, and I just saw a dead animal laying on my counter, and I was like, oh my God, and that's what we want people to see, that this is not meat. Meat doesn't exist. It's a dead animal. And for that, they need to see the faces. And I think it's really good to have an opportunity to get close to the animals. And we need to have a good relationship with the slaughterhouses. And another thing is that for a long time as an activist, I was full of hate. I hated not only slaughterhouse workers, I hated vegetarians, I hated meat eaters, I hated my father, I lost all my friends. I have no friends left before going vegan because I was angry all the time. And I don't think we realize what anger does to you as a person. Like it's a really heavy emotion. And it actually sort of changes your biochemistry. If you really dive into what it does, it just can change your whole perspective on the world. And finding somewhere in you the capacity to be friendly to those workers is really beneficial to ourselves as people. And it made me happier and not as angry anymore, to actually sort of come to terms with that. Like, we're not going to fix it today. We're not going to convince you. I'm always honest. Like, I still want to close your business. I don't want you to continue. But I can have a chat with them, and I can even laugh with them sometimes. Like it's when I now come at my vigil, it's just, hey Lea, how are you doing? It's like, hey, how are you? How's the wife? And it's all chit chat. But I sort of found a way to deal with that. So I would love to see this happening more around the world, for people to actually connect again and have conversations. And it's really interesting what comes out of it, from even saving animals, because you are not coming there as an angry mob trying to, disrupt, but like, hey, let's have a conversation about this, even though we don't agree with it. So that was a really long answer to a very short question.
But thanks. It's interesting, and I would say, from the Swedish perspective, I would say we have had the same attitude, not hateful at all. We try to be friendly. I think this goes for all the local groups in Sweden. But we haven't had nowhere close to the success that you have had. And I don't know why, but they just keep putting up more fences, more like obstacles and lines that we can't cross and so on. We have tried to be in dialogue also with the leadership, but also locally. Maybe we could try a bit more to just reach out to individual workers. We haven't done that very much, but we haven't been unfriendly at all. Perhaps it's different in different countries, but we might be missing something that I don't see. I don't know.
It's also really patient, and maybe like the more slaughterhouses started working, the more it also will maybe affect other countries. It might be worth, like, we have the biggest slaughterhouses in the Netherlands. It might be worth sending an email to them and mention those big slaughterhouses, Like in the Netherlands, they have good relationships. In the Netherlands, they can even go outside because they prove themselves to be really friendly and not disruptive at all. Like it might, and also keep on trying. Every time I have a vigil, I send a really nice, there's a few slaughterhouses that we don't have an agreement with, and I send them a nice email every time, say, hey, here's me again. Do you maybe want to have a chat with this? I know, of course, if you don't want to work, we will still be really nice. And like I sort of like sugarcoat it a little bit. And then like one calf slaughterhouse has ignored me for 3 years. And now we finally got an email back saying, yes, I want to meet you, because they also hear from the other slaughterhouses that we are such a nice group. So this is my way in, after keep on trying, don't give up. I think this is something that we should like, and don't push it, but just keep trying to have the dialogue and keep pointing out the places. There's also places in Los Angeles and other parts of the world where they have good relationship. Point that out to them. And one thing that also might help is point out like there's a lot of undercover footage out there that shows the worst of the worst. This is your chance to show the truth. And of course it's horrible, but they really think they are doing the right thing. So it might be in their interest, because it's not like, in all honesty, it's not all wounded pigs in trucks or chickens is a little bit of a different story, but and a lot of organizations are showing the worst of the worst. And we are showing faces. So it might be worth saying, like, this is your chance to show that there's healthy pigs in there. You don't have to make that like worldly known, but you can say it to them. So yeah, it might be worth trying to point out what other people do. And so I think I saw something in the chat.
Yeah, Lotta, you mentioned or asked blockades part of animal save movement, or is it something else? We in Sweden haven't done blockades as save, but I've heard there has been some in some countries, right, Lea?
Exactly. In Germany, for instance, they had a blockage, and I know they had it in Mexico. So this is the thing, like we are a grassroots movement, so something that is absolutely in the Netherlands, absolutely no way. We would lose all the relationships. In Germany, it's a little bit, they don't really find it that offensive when that happens. We do really try to steer away from it. This is not something we do. I'm not saying that I don't agree with blockage, or like I've been inside a farm with Meet the Victim, so I've definitely believe in those type of actions. It's just not what we do. We are really trying to talk to people and connect to people. And if you think that something like that happens, it needs to happen, by all means, organize something else or join a group that does it. But I think it's really important that SAVE shows this love page, because if you do it in a different country, eventually it can also make it harder for you in Sweden to get an agreement, because they can also see like, oh, in Germany, Save Movement did a slaughterhouse blockage, which is really not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to disrupt this business. We try to show the animals, we show up for them, in their final hours, because it's really sad to vigil, but I can actually cry my eyes out thinking that most of the time there's just no one there. So let's focus on that, like being there for the animals. And if somebody tells me like, oh, we want to do this in any of the European countries, I would definitely have a talk with them and say, please don't do this. You can't do it from SAVE. Yeah. Please don't.
We have had, and I've been part of slaughter blockades myself, but with other groups.
Exactly.
And of course that can be love-based as well. It's not, and I'm sure I think you agree. But it's a more confrontational method, obviously. And I think that there is something about that also. Martin Luther King, he talked about making a drama to show the violence. When we put ourselves on the line, it can show or be more visible, the violence somehow against the animals. But it's different methods, and sometimes they can clash. That there is some possibility that I have seen that some of the people that do blockade also are in Save.
Definitely, like I'm one of them, so I would not. I think it's also really important that as a movement we don't criticize other people's ways. It's not vigils that are going to save the world. It's not the plant-based treaty that's going to save the world. It's everything together. If you ask nicely, like I as a woman wouldn't have like voting rights right now if people didn't actually break the laws and went out the street and do like more of a bold kind of action. So I think it's a tactic that can really be useful. And we should never say something like, oh, that is bad to do it. It's just like, it's not for animal safe movement. And we should not confuse the two. So yeah, there's groups that do it really well. Animal Rebellion has like really disruptive, non-violent, because I really do believe in non-violence. I think violence is never the answer. But I believe in disruption for sure. Especially like with fur, you see it happening now. It's a very effective tactic. Going into stores, shouting, and like make it like terrible for these people to work there until they say, okay, you know, it's really, you see like a domino. There's the fur groups are killing it out there. They're so well organized. Their pressure campaigns are so well organized. And I'm really cheering for them, but we would not, so every tactic works, but let's just keep it to the organization or the movement that is doing it, and check if it's still in line with SAFE, I think. I think that's a good...
Yeah. Thank you. In the beginning of this talk, you mentioned infighting, and actually before this talk, I was at a talk that the psychologist Melanie Joy had about infighting specifically.
I missed that one. I wanted to go, but
Right. And if you don't know Melanie Joy, she's a psychologist at Beyond Carnism, which is an organization dealing with there's a psychology behind why we eat meat, but also how we as movements, as vegans, can get along better and work more effectively. And I know that session was recorded, so I think you can somehow, I hope everyone can reach it somehow. And many good things were said in that talk. But perhaps, Lea, do you want to say something about infighting and how we can manage that somehow or make it less damaging for the movement?
You can actually fill a whole topic about it, but I think one of the main things is communicate by talking to each other. I'm a regional liaison, and a big part of my work is actually conflict resolution. So a lot of times when there's a conflict in a country, I get on the call and I find out what's happening, and it usually takes a lot of calls, but listening and people like emotional. A lot of things happen in the chat. It's a lot of times somebody types something and then somebody starts typing back and other people jump into it, and then it blows up. And then when you have people on a call, it turns out like they say really quite fast, like, oh yeah, but I didn't mean it, and my dog is sick and my mom's has not been well, and and the other person say, yeah, I know you don't mean it like that, and I'm really sorry, but like it's really rare that it's a really big thing. So one thing that I would advise, if anything, just pick up the phone and ring somebody. If you need a Zoom call, make a Zoom call, and also like ask for my help sooner than later. That's why I'm really, really trained in dealing with conflicts. And usually a talk settles a lot. Instead of going back and forward, because you're not actually listening. You're not even listening because you're reading. And you're usually trying to figure out what you want to type instead of actually thinking like, okay, what is this person saying? It has no context in a text, and you actually start reading it like you feel. I had a conflict myself, like in the beginning, where I thought like I wanted to close the conversation in a good manner. And I said something that I thought was really well meant, like I said, and this person picked it up the wrong way, and it made it worse. If we would just like look at each other's face or had been on the phone, we would have immediately knew that we didn't mean it like we read it. So please have conversation, but also I think really important is to train our organizers and our national coordinators about dealing with these situations, and that is something that I really want to try to work on in the next couple of years as well. So people are equipped to how to handle conflicts. And another briefly thing about this is that we also need to understand that we don't have that many people. And I want to keep everybody in the movement. I'm not friends with everybody. You don't have to be friends with everybody, but the fact that somebody takes their time for animal rights and show up should say something about that person. And everybody's different. There's a place for everybody in this movement. Even the ones that are maybe a little bit more present or yeah, I even sort of like sometimes people are really visible at social media. Is that a bad thing that you are having your channel and showing off yourself? In the beginning I thought it was like I thought of influencers as I don't know, these people also have their part. So if you can reach somebody by showing more of yourself than the animals, like, okay, it's not my thing, but do your thing, as long as it's not an ego thing, because that is like, we should really look out for that and address that as soon as possible. But yeah, people are different, and let's be happy with everybody.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Melanie Joy also said, building on what you said, Lea, that training in relationship literacy to learn about relationships and how do I function, what are my problems, and so on, to try to deal with that, and also to not be burned out, of course. And some of us are traumatized also about what we see, what's happening to animals, and of course that can negatively affect the relationships we have and the way we behave towards each other and so on, because we're so frustrated and maybe angry.
Definitely.
As some of you have mentioned, that of course that will affect how we work and relate to one another.
Yeah. I that's a very good point. And I see Mia, thank you for joining, and have a good evening.
Yes, thank you. And
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you. And we will be wrapping up here because the hour has gone. But is there some finishing words someone wants to say before we end this call?
I did see some comments of Lotte that I maybe want to read.
Sure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Family members, that's maybe the last subject. I find them the hardest to change. When I went vegan, I thought, oh, if I just show this one video that made me vegan to everybody will be a vegan. And then they didn't. Like, I was like, what happened? And somebody you just met is more like susceptible to your message. It's really the hardest thing. And I would say that don't lose your family. I became estranged from my family, and now I'm reconnecting to them. It's really sort of an awakening to be really become vegan and make that connection, and people make it on their own terms. So connect to your vegan family and other activists, and yeah, don't try to put as much energy into it, because it's really frustrating that to see the people that you love don't get it. My husband wasn't vegan at the beginning, and I really chose to let that happily. I didn't push him, and then he became a vegan as well. And now my dad is doing Veganuary. He is 67. So now he starts to get it, and he's now doing Veganuary with his girlfriend, which I'm really happy about. But before he was like, oh no, like that vegan is like not for me. I like my meat. So yeah, don't put your frustration into it, and give them some time and some space. And that also touched again, because I see that you said you were really angry. It's kind of the same thing. When you find the love again for the people, you become a happier person. And I think we really need to be as kind to ourselves as possible. So yeah, please find it, the kindness in your heart, and I think we radiate that to the rest of the world. I think love wins. It's such a corny sentence, but I really believe it. Like, if we all, radiate this love that we want to see for the world, it actually sort of becomes stronger. So yeah, let's sort of close it up with that, because I always love to give that to people, to give them more love than there is hate in the world.
Yeah, thank you, Lea. That's a good closing words. And I can, I agree with the family. I haven't tried to push them, my family, and I've been vegan for about 15 years. Now recently, my mom is getting around. She stopped eating meat, and yeah, it can happen. My dad, now he's not alive anymore, but he would never change it. But that's the way it is. We are different, as you have said, but to try to find the love also for those that don't agree with you, I think is very important. How nice to get the companionship of
Yes.
who is that?
Yeah, this is my Ziggy, my dog.
Ziggy.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all for your contributions, everyone. I hope you found it as rewarding as I did. We in Sweden will continue to have these kind of talks, because I think it's important to have them continuously, to encourage each other and to give ourselves, to find the best strategies for ourselves and the movement and so on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Martin.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. And thank you everybody for listening to me and giving input. And I wish you all the best with activism. If there's anything that you want to ask me, always reach out to me. So yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. And bye then.
Bye-bye.